What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. That is me. With me, as always, super producer Brandon Newman. Brandon, those are not prescription sunglasses, I'm presuming.
They are prescription sunglasses. Why are we doing this so early on in the thing?
I don't believe you, and neither does our guest. Neither. I'm not sure which I say or which she says. Guys, it is Wednesday, which means in the new year, the 1st of 2023, we're back with a Wilder Wednesday. Charlotte Wilder back joining us here on the podcast, Fox Sports writer and college football reporter. Charlotte, Happy New Year.
Michael, thank you so much. Brandon, I don't believe you for a second. Those are not, you don't need your sunglasses unless you lost your actual prescription. See, you have all the power. That's the problem.
And I can hear the critics talking over the applause. It's a Drake line.
It is.
Of course it is.
But it was an applause for you. So yes, I was trying to drown you out though, because y'all can't. I can't. How can I prove to you that I'm wearing polarized prescription lenses? And it doesn't matter.
You can't, and it doesn't matter.
I see you very clearly, and I know that you're even clearer than you usually are.
Yeah, because I got a new computer, and then I just told these guys I have to actually put makeup on. It used to be too pixelated. You couldn't see the dark circles under my eyes. Now the camera got better. Apple just screwing up my routine.
I should say rest in peace, Steve Jobs, the ghost of Steve Jobs,
Yeah.
continuing to upgrade the software on these things. Charlotte, we're excited to have you back here. The holiday glow that's on you right now, I can't quite tell what's different about. Woo! Yeah! Yeah!
So obnoxious. It's so obnoxious. Yes, I got engaged. Thank you. Woo! Thank you. Very exciting. Very exciting. Thank you.
Oh, how did it happen? What? How are you feeling? Okay.
I'm feeling great. It's very strange to say fiance instead of boyfriend. There's no way you can say that word without feeling like you're trying to be fancy, but I'm really just trying to be accurate. My fiance Tyler proposed just at home in our apartment, which was the kindest thing he ever could have done for me, because the idea of a public proposal is like, it makes me break out in hives. No disrespect to anybody who does enjoy that, because I completely respect it. And then we went out to a lovely dinner, and it's just celebrated with our families, and it's been a lovely couple of weeks.
Damn, you love to see it. See, simplify the equation, and that's also knowing your teammate, knowing your future spouse.
Amen.
For him to go into the situation. That's doing the advanced scouting, that's knowing your teammate, and that's delivering in a clutch moment. Those are all sports. Charlotte, is proposing to your girlfriend sports?
Absolutely, yes. And it's the degree of difficulty was upped because we live together in a 1-bedroom apartment and are constantly, he was like, do you know how hard it was to try to plan this without you? He had caviar and champagne, which was so sweet. But he hid it in the fridge, and he was like, I was glad that you as a person can be a little oblivious at times, because it made it easier for me to hide things in our apartment. So that he won the champion. I mean, he won the championship, but I got the ring. So am I right?
Hey,
Ooh, that's a
Do you
bar
want to know,
right there.
actually, the best part of the proposal is that when he proposed to me, I was wearing my Larry Bird vintage Celtics t-shirt. And afterwards, we were like, oh my God. I was like, Larry might have gotten 17, but I got the only ring that matters. I mean, Larry himself didn't get 17, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's the people who need to know.
Yeah.
But man, glad. All right, so congratulations, Charlotte. The definitive ruling from the internet's arbiter of sports that getting engaged is sports. So you can all feel very secure in that. And I think our status as a podcast, the Good Luck Chuck of podcasts, is very secure now, considering we recently had Katie Nolan come on and tell us about her engagement here. So ladies, gentlemen, if you're looking to find the love of your life somewhere other than this podcast, we're the show for you. We clearly have the Midas touch around the holiday season.
It's
Come
true.
On consistently. Excuse me. Yes. Come on consistently and find your partner forever.
I love that. Us Boston girls growing up right in front of everybody's eyes.
Look at that. Beautiful
Look at
thing. People helping people. Well, we love all of that. We love having you back here in the new year.
Mike,
got a lot of what, Brandon?
I can't switch yet. Did anything awkward happen since being affianced? Anything weird? Any hard conversation? Like any of that, in that real shit?
I'm trying to think. Well, I got RSV, so I was sick for
What? No.
I was sick over Christmas, and so that threw a real wrench in things. So yes, and I think we and our families handled it beautifully.
Wow.
And I was the problem. I was typhoid Charlotte over here.
Oh my God.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Yes.
You.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Why?
No, it's
Did
me.
she have
Hi,
RSV?
I'm the. It's it's me. Hi, I had RSV.
It's me. Hey, there it is.
There it is.
There it is. There.
Well, I asked because obviously I wanted to set myself up for a story.
I was just gonna say that was the most self-serving question. There is
We know
nothing.
you.
Nothing screams holiday season more than asking people about something that you want to talk about.
Well, I mean, we had another shake at this engagement story thing, thanks to Tyler stepping up to the plate and doing the damn thing, locking down Charlotte forever.
Yeah, he did a great job.
Shout out to him. But so we got engaged in Hawaii, in Maui. It was one of those we were planning the trip and we had been dating for a long time, and she was like, "You're not going to get engaged in. You're not going to propose to me in Maui, are you?" I was like, "No, it's the last thing on my mind." Meanwhile, I had been paying buckets of money to Tiffany for the last X amount of months to have a ring to propose with. So sneaking a ring there. And obviously, I got yelled at because I was late on the day that we were supposed to pack for the last day before we went to the airport. And, I was getting the ring, right? So there's that. But anyways, proposed on the beach. It was private. It was just us. But then we went to celebrate. We went to a movie. And my wife is white. My wife is white. My white is wife. And we went to see Get Out. The night that we got engaged, and it was the most quiet car ride on the way home. I remember saying to her as we got in the car, I said, I want to know what you think about the movie, but definitely not today.
Brandon, that's beautiful. That's incredible.
Thank you.
So wait, how long after the movie did you propose?
Mike, it was before the movie.
No.
Oh, I missed that part. Okay.
Yes, it was before the movie.
Oh,
It was
God.
like, okay, we just proposed. What's something great we can do? Like, go see this new movie that came out that everyone's talking about.
Oh my God, Brandon.
It was just,
Oh.
it was
I
great.
mean,
it was
I
like
can't-
going through the fire, like
I think,
straight up.
yeah, that'll test you. And as a white person from New England whose family belongs to a country club, watching that, I was like, talk about a Taylor Swift moment. Talk about, hey, I'm the problem. So
Charlotte,
kudos
you're wearing the outfit that she was wearing in the movie. Actually, currently, the little when she was like looking at she was eating her dry Fruit Loops, and she just had a black sweater on.
Sweatshirt. God damn it.
Yeah, it's man.
Kate.
I'm not gonna lie. Seeing Get Out with your white fiance after you proposed on that day in the place that she told you not to propose is up there for like awkward celebratory moments with me sitting 2 seats down from my grandmother seeing Wolf of Wall Street on Christmas Day. We have found something.
I went to see Wedding Crashers with my uncle and cousins when we were all
gets
little,
sexy.
and the whole scene, first part's just boobs.
Oh,
I will say that Tyler and I do now have a bit where, like, if anything happens, he'll be like, "Are you sorry you said yes?" and I'll be like, "Are you sorry you asked me?" So it's a good running bit that.
That's nice. That's fun.
Yeah.
That is a good bit. I wonder what the shelf life, when people talk about how long you can say Happy New Year's, I wonder what the shelf life is on that bit before one of you is going to look at the other and go,
I think it'll be the rest of our lives. I think we'll be like, "Are you sorry you said I do?" Like, I don't think this was ever gonna.
Oh yeah, as someone who's married to someone who else, we got married on our 10-year dating anniversary, and it definitely was still like, do you regret this? Do you regret the whole thing? do you want this time back?
It's a lot of me being like, "I'm sorry that I am the way that I am. Are you sure?"
Oh, man. Despite being a Northeasterner, very Midwestern sensibilities to apologize for pretty much everything about your being.
Thank you. I'm going to take that as a compliment.
Believe me, it is. Ope, and away. So, very excited for our dear friend Charlotte Wilder.
Thank you
we
so
do have
much.
some fun things that we want to talk about on here today. Jim Harbaugh, been in the news the last few days, feeling froggy, wondering if he's going to jump. And that's not just a pun because the Horned Frogs are going to the national title. An interesting question about college football versus the NFL and what we've seen in this bowl season, but not to throttle things down too much, but I think important in light of what's happened in the last couple of days since Monday Night Football. Charlotte, we haven't talked to you, and I certainly want to hear your thoughts and feelings and your reaction to what we saw occur with Damar Hamlin, the second-year safety for the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football. I will just briefly provide the update from the NFL and what we have seen as of late on Damar Hamlin. And this is on multiple fronts. First and foremost, Damar Hamlin still in critical condition in a Cincinnati hospital. We've seen statements from the Bills. We've seen statements from his family thanking everyone for their outpouring, their thoughts and prayers, and saying they will provide an update when there is one to be provided. Roger Goodell and the NFL sent out a memo to the league saying a number of things. First and foremost, that the game between the Bills and the Bengals that was suspended on Monday night will not be resumed this week. The NFL said that he's informed teams the game will not be resumed this week after consulting with both teams and the NFL Players Association leadership. The league, however, has made no decision on resuming the game at a later date. They said the NFL continues to be in regular contact with the medical team caring for Damar Hamlin and also the Bills and Bengals organizations and the NFLPA. So there's that to be aware of. And then for Roger Goodell overall, he also sent out a note saying the head of NFL player engagement and team clinician for each club received information on a doctor to use for mental health and support resources that are available to players and staff. And additional resources, including on-site services, can be available for any club that wishes for that assistance. And if your club would like to, it gives them the ability to contact that. And so that process has started of the NFL both reaching out to the teams and players for the resources they're going to need to grieve and to process what they were a part of, especially the teams on the field, but also making it clear that right now they are not focused on when or if that football game is going to be played. They are keeping the focus squarely on Damar Hamlin. So that is the latest that we know. Charlotte, what was your reaction to all of this? Me and Brandon talked a lot about this as the former player perspective, as people that have been and seen people in compromised situations, but nothing like this, but to see a teammate. What was it like for you as someone watching sports to perceive this moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is when you say, not to throttle things down too much. I think what we witnessed on Monday was the most extreme version of how complicated sports are to talk about at all. And I think that first and foremost, the only thing that matters is Damar Hamlin's life and his family and his friends and his teammates. And I can't speak to this as really any point of authority in terms of I wasn't a player. I don't know what it's like to have, I know what it's like to be close to people. I don't know what it's like to have a bond with people when the stakes are so high and your physical life is on the line, whether or not you are conscious of that. I think what Ryan Clark said on Monday Night Football, first of all, I can speak to it as a journalist and as someone who cares deeply about the athletes that I talk about and who tries to always keep in mind that these are people that at the center of this game, I get really upset with sports media people when they take themselves seriously, to be honest. And this will come back around, I promise. But I think we are talking about grown people who are playing a made-up game. And if you lose sight of the fact that the only part of that sentence that matters is people, grown people, that's it. Mm-hmm. That's sometimes very young people. That's the only part that matters. The game doesn't matter. The rules are made up. They could not play this game and nothing would happen. But the people who play this game, are taking on the highest stakes for our entertainment. And I think that if you lose sight of that, and if you aren't always talking about sports with that in the back of your head, hopefully in the front of your head, you've jumped the shark. And I thought ESPN did an absolutely incredible job of keeping that perspective at the forefront of their broadcast. And I think that if you are anybody who did not, or who used this as a part of your agenda in any other way, you should not be doing this as a profession, because all that matters is Damar Hamlin's life. I'm getting emotional talking about it. It's like the most horrific thing you could ever imagine. And I think that there are a lot of other things you can talk about, the how many different things are true at once when you talk about sports, how much you have to compartmentalize to talk about the game that we love, how further on in this podcast, we're going to talk about it in a fun way after we just had this conversation. But I think that that's a conversation that if you're doing this, I would hope that you always have that in your mind. And that at this point, the only thing that anybody should be worried about is this young man.
Yeah, it's, I think, a great point about the bargain we sort of make to all come to sports, because there's a notion that gets brought up all the time about sports being an escape, and it is. And the part of our conversation that'll come later that you mentioned is the escape part. It's the fun, it's the low stakes, made up, grown men wearing costumes part of sports that we all get to enjoy the ridiculousness of at times. But part of the bargain that I always believed is someone covering it, and that's, born out of being someone that played it. But like you described, a lot of people that cover it, fans of it, people who are fortunate enough to know someone in it, you recognize that humanity there, and you do keep that at the forefront. And so when things come up and you have to have conversations about things like this, you're willing to do that because you acknowledge the humanity of the people in there. They're not just there to serve you. They're not just some entertainment piece, even if this is an entertainment product. And so I think that is an important vantage point for this and how we come to it. And by the way, just a quick note, shame on me for not actually stating this at the beginning when I mentioned that Damar Hamlin was in the hospital after suffering cardiac arrest during the game on Monday night. I didn't mention that specific point, wanted to make sure that was in there in case every podcast is somebody's first and you weren't aware of this information.
Yeah, I think too, at a time like this, everybody wants information and everybody wants answers and everybody wants to be reassured. And I think part of the horribleness of this situation is that we're not going to have, we shouldn't have that. We are not entitled to that information until it is time for us to know. Damar Hamlin's family and his friends and his teammate and the people who they deem it is appropriate for them to know first and foremost are the ones who need that information. So what that does is it creates a vacuum where we've built this 24-hour news cycle, and there are all these articles about what is cardiac arrest, what is CPR, it's hard not to fall down that rabbit hole. I found myself today, on the Mayo Clinic website for what is cardiac arrest, for arrhythmia, for all of these things, because I was almost embarrassed, but I was hungry for any kind of information that might help me as a person understand some semblance of what's going on. And the truth is you can't. And so I think that is, all I just there's a loss for words, and I think that's hard for people too. Like, I'm also not a particularly religious person, so I'm not one to say I pray for him and his family, but that's also the only thing that feels like you can say. And so it just creates this void of like, how are we supposed to go? I mean, like, what are we are we gonna just watch NFL games? Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
The answer is probably yes. Now, that might vary from person to person, and maybe a moment like this does prompt soul searching for people involved in the game, for the players and coaches that were most directly affected by this, for fans and parents watching with their kids at home. Maybe some people, they're still distant enough from it to where they're going to go back and watch football this weekend, and they're going to pay attention to it in much the same way they did going into that game on Monday night. That's going to be for every person to decide, but this was the kind of moment that does jolt you out of your seat and sort of make you come to terms with that however you will personally, based off something that was decidedly outside of what we normally experience in sports.
Yeah, and I would say, as somebody who is echoed the sentiments of thoughts and prayers, because I am a praying person. Love and light is a sentiment that I've seen on social media a lot. And Mike, I think you mentioned the other day, and I love that sentiment. I love that illustration, that action. But speaking of action, I want to say that I say that a lot, but as someone who does pray, I recognize the power of prayer. So to take the time away and do it was something that I did today, and I cried. I cried out loud by speaking and actually sending the good feelings and well wishes and prayers and hopes that your energy towards the thing can help or heal. But I just wanted to mention that, in the sense that this is very real for a lot of us and scary for a lot of us. And to hear all these former football players and the conversations they're having with their children watching the game, and it's just it feels like a big inflection point for the NFL, and the timing of it. You know, Monday Night Football, there's a lot of variables around it that make it feel as heavy as it was.
I want to say, Brandon, I think that's just the most beautiful expression of what this is truly about, which is hoping and praying for another person. And I think even as someone who doesn't generally pray, that there's this fallback where it's like, that's all you can do. You know, when there's no information, when there's no action to be taken. And I think that that's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I think that a lot of people are having to sit with that as sports fans, as people who watch this game. And I also think something that I've found very moving from players and you know, again, what Ryan Clark said about loving this game. I think that part of the conversation, you know, it's very easy to vilify anything having to do with the situation. And I think that is not honoring the people who play it, or Damar himself, who, you know, and I know for you guys, and Brandon, you've talked about the dream, you've talked about, you know, the league as the be-all end-all. Like, that is still so real and so valid and needs to be honored for the people who want this too. So it's just a sort of an impossible thing to have everything in your head all at once, and yet, you know, until that's just how it is.
Yeah, well, and I think you guys both bring up really good points about looking for something actionable and being frustrated when you can't do anything and being scared when you can't do anything. That was the fear we saw in his teammates' eyes, because to your point, Charlotte, about the sport, I've said it's the most accountable sport on earth because your friend's physical well-being is often in your hands. I've said if I'm a step short on a block, my buddy, the running back or the quarterback, gets hit, and who knows what happens after that happens. And so the buy-in and accountability and love that I have for my former our teammates is always different than what I'm going to have with my coworkers and friends, because what was asked of us was different in those moments. And so you feel helpless as a teammate, as someone, other players in this league watching in the same fraternity, when there's nothing you can do for someone in that situation. And so then multiply that for all the people watching. And that's why you've seen people giving to Damar Hamlin's charity in the interim here to raise money online for kids who don't have toys around the holidays. What started with a goal with $2,500 is now over $5 million in the first 21 hours since then. People looking for something actionable. That also can go the other way, where I've seen a lot of people looking for someone to blame, looking for the NFL to blame them for the timeline here. And I, in the immediacy, kind of asked for grace for everybody, because we've seen disputed that 5-minute clock that people talked about here. And we saw the league come out, Troy Vincent say that was never something he floated out there. He was the one communicating with Goodell, and that would be insensitive. That would be wrong. He's a former player and cited that. And so I looking at that, action plans, all these things are going to be a story for another day. And for the NFL, again, right now, they've rightly kept the focus on that. And I think what would be more productive right now than searching just for blame. Again, if it comes to find in a review of this process that in anywhere along that line the NFL stepped out of place, I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say they were wrong, and we'll take them to task for it. But with the lack of information concrete that we have on that now, I'm going to withhold from that. And what I'd say is probably a course of action that I would just encourage more people to consider, to go back to the original point about humanity, is if you're looking for something actionable to do off of this, because this was big on Monday Night Football, impossible to avoid. There are going to be a lot of other instances in your sports watching lifetime that come up that have to do with players' health, well-being, safety, and bodies that are a lot harder to see clearly like this. They look like labor issues. They look like the normal things that we talk about every day, where fans then tend to side with the uniform and the laundry of the team because that's the thing that's more permanent for them. And I would just say in those moments, support players' bodies then. You can support these things when it comes up in other ways, when it comes to things like, and I saw Dominique Foxworth talking about the healthcare and the things that come after your time in the NFL. And so, again, I think those are just things to keep in mind that are wholly separate. Like, I do not want to turn this moment into any sort of semi-political grandstanding in name of this young man, but it's just that point again of what we're seeing right now, the empathy. We can be consistent with that. We can keep that going. We can do that for Damar Hamlin right now, and you can do it after as well.
I think that's the most I think that's it, Mike. I think that's I mean, really, like that what you just said is at the heart of this whole thing, is that there's a man's life that we are all praying for, and in the future there will be other men's, other women's lives, other people's lives who it won't be as clear cut or dramatic, and to keep their humanity at the forefront. And that's sort of, how I started this discussion talking about, I think it is, if you get to a point as a fan or a commentator or someone where you can't see these people as your friends, as your family members, where you lack some kind of empathy, or you've lost some sort of, or you never had it, then you've got to do some real soul searching, because the people are, and I think that when the players made the decision not to play, when the two coaches made the decisions not to play, that was such a powerful example of the power of union. And this is not a political statement either. This is not saying a union. This is a power of people making a decision together, saying no matter what is supposed to happen, no matter what higher word comes down from a chain, we have the power together to try to do the right thing. And I think that was, that had me in tears. That was incredibly moving. So there are these moments that you take from this that sort of keep, as you think about it, I find keep popping up in my head. It's like, oh my God, either what a horrific thing, or what the love and light in the shadow of this horrific thing.
Yep. So, and again, we keep the young man at the forefront of all of that love and light. However you go about that, make sure it is, and we'll wait for the good news that we hope is coming as he gets the medical care and his family can surround him and Damar Hamlin can make a recovery and do all the things that he was supposed to before this and live out his dreams, on the field if that's what's in his heart, but certainly off the field for the rest of his life as this goes forward. So, this is the no easy transition part of things. Charlotte, thank you for sharing all that. Brandon and I obviously got to talk a lot about this yesterday, but your perspective on this, invaluable, super helpful. Everyone feel free to take a quick beat right now. Feel free to take a quick breath because we are going to talk about some of the other things happening in sports right now. And as I always say, if that's not for you at this moment, go ahead and shut it down. Doesn't need to be for you right now. This stuff's all time marked for a reason in the podcast and in the notes below it. If it is, and you're looking for something like a breath of fresh air, a little bit of levity in a time that has been really hard for a lot of people, as we've heard talked about very publicly, then dive right in. We're here for you on the backside of this. As we take a look at it. So with that in mind, one of the headlines that popped up the other day that I thought was interesting coming off a season where, Charlotte, you were on the road covering a lot of college football. I obviously called a lot of college football games. Me and Brandon talk about it all the time here. Jim Harbaugh, who recently made his exit from the college football playoff as Michigan was bounced by TCU, popped up in the news according to the fine folks over at The Athletic. And I want to make sure I have this pulled up so I can give credit to Bruce Feldman, Nicole Auerbach, Austin Meek, Nick Kosmider, and Joseph Person, who are all on the article talking about Jim Harbaugh, who, according to multiple sources close to Jim Harbaugh, telling The Athletic on Monday, they expect he will leave Michigan for the NFL if a franchise offers him a coaching job this upcoming season. So, Charlotte, can we be surprised by this at all, especially after what we went through last offseason?
No, you can't. And this is a prime example of, this is why I really love sports, right? Because it's all gossip, it's all drama, it's all speculation when it's not on the field. And not saying that this report is speculation. These are great reporters. That I just mean like me talking about it now. This is pure speculation. The mistake that Jim Harbaugh made was last year when he didn't get an offer from the Vikings, right? It wasn't that he turned them down. He didn't get the offer and he said, time to go back to college football. This is the last time. We're not doing it. Don't ever say that. Don't ever say that. I don't care if you work in marketing for like a dog food company. Don't ever say, I'll never do this. I'll never take this other opportunity. I'll never go to cat food. Like, come on, guys. It's such a bold-faced lie. Can you imagine?
I mean,
someone like,
but yeah. Go ahead.
And I was just gonna say he was on a tear with bold-faced lies. Because I think a couple of months after that, he said he'd take everyone on his team's illegitimate children. Like he just said he'd take the babies.
He would raise his team. His team's babies. Yes.
That was that after Roe v. Wade fell and he was trying to say the thing that wouldn't upset people, and he's like, "Hey, hear me out. Instead of abortions, I take your kids."
Yeah. Welcome to Jim Harbaugh's child farm.
I mean,
my wife and I, open door. Come on.
So, no, I was not shocked at all. I do think, though, that it's an interesting look from a guy who, look, you finally beat Ohio State twice, 2 years in a row, once on the road, and then you make it to the college football playoffs and you choke. And I think that it is a very hard thing to do to get to the college football playoff. So I'm not saying like, come on, you wuss, like go win it. But I think that as the way John, I always do that. I did that during a feature and we didn't catch it. And I got all these dudes on the internet were like, she doesn't even know the difference. And I was like, no, I know the difference between Jim and John. I just said the wrong thing because they're basically the same name. Sorry. What I will say is that Jim Harbaugh has this vibe of like team first, this always, I'm in it, I'll take your kids. And then he's like, however, if presented with an opportunity to go to the pros, I would take it.
I have other kids that I need to go potentially help raise on a different team.
Exactly.
Yeah, are you guys okay with our children coming us to the Carolina Panthers? Can your children travel with us? No,
How do you feel about the Eastern Seaboard?
Yeah.
Listen, I love talking about Jim Harbaugh because Jim Harbaugh is in a position that every coach wants to be in. He has had large amounts of success, now obviously not the mountaintops level of success, but large levels of success, made copious amounts of money, both in the NFL in khaki pants and in Michigan, his alma mater, where he's spending the night over kids' places and kind of throwing everything on his head. Like, I got recruited by him in high school when he was at Stanford. Mike, don't do this. But Stanford was dog shit at the time. I think they went 0-13 his first season there. But he was recruiting the hell out of me, and I was snitching on him to Coach Weiss. I was like, hey, this is what he was saying. Like, he was saying, like he said, I'll share this little quick anecdote.
Yeah, tell us.
He said, this is Jim Harbaugh. Sorry, I'll bleep that out.
I was just saying, dear God, man.
I'll make a little edit, Mark.
Took a turn. Talk about gossip.
It's just, no, whatever.
High on life.
High on life. Jim Harbaugh, high on life, recruiting his ass off. He's like, you like a challenge, Brandon? Do you like a challenge? I was like, yeah, I like the challenge. So do I. Bring on Charlie Weiss's fat ass. I'll take him any day. I'm getting you to Stanford. I don't care if Notre Dame offered you. I'm getting you to Stanford. And I was like, oh, okay.
Are you kidding me?
I mean,
that's also hilarious, because if someone asked me, do you like a challenge? I'd be like, at this point in my life, I'd prefer something that I think I have a chance of succeeding at.
Yeah, I want to be realistic about my chances here.
Yeah, I'll be like, I'll take a challenge. Depends. Is it an 0-13 challenge? Because I might skip that one.
Yeah.
Where's the expiration date on this challenge? Like, how long do I have?
That being said, the reason why this is a viable conversation is a fewfold. One of which is he overcame that challenge. He is generally a guy that is looked at before this as program jump starter. Now, the difference, and I think the thing that's interesting to consider with him is before, he was, I always liken Jim Harbaugh to a jackhammer, is he could come in and he could do hard things fast. And then after a while, the sound of the jackhammer in the background seemed to grate on people. And that's why he was moving on. That's why the tenures didn't seem very long at these spots, because what he asks you to do is very hard. His style is very aggressive. And so all of those things didn't really lead to longevity. And then you got to Michigan, and when things went south, that kind of changed. Like, the Jim Harbaugh we've seen post-2020 doesn't look like the guy that was doing sleepaway vacations with recruits. It's been a lot tamer. It's been a lot quieter, but the work has gotten done at a really high level. And to the point with that high level, like, you look at Jim Harbaugh and his record. That's the other part of this. 74-25 in college over the course of his 8 years at Michigan. In the NFL, 44-19-1, including a Super Bowl appearance against his brother John that he lost. It's not like when we talk about these situations, because this is going to be a complicated conversation when it comes to jobs like the Indianapolis Colts and the Rooney Rule, since they've already been under fire for going and hiring Jeff Saturday as an interim head coach. In any of these jobs, because that is rightly and understandably a hot button issue in the NFL, when you have the team like the Carolina Panthers, who we've seen reports coming out now, their owner, David Tepper, reportedly had a conversation with Jim Harbaugh after saying he wasn't going to go back in the college ranks for a coach after the Matt Rule thing. It's a bit different with this guy because he's been successful. He's been high-end good at these spots, even if it's not been national championship or Super Bowl good. And so what he brings to the table feels a little bit more defensible in that way than hiring, let's say, a Cliff Kingsbury, who came off of a failing season at Texas Tech before getting the Arizona Cardinals job.
I think that's a great point, Mike. I think that a lot of times when we talk about this, we talk about the people and the jokes about them and the he said he wouldn't and then he's going to. But the one thing that I guess is a little refreshing about this is that Jim Harbaugh isn't bad at his job.
Yeah.
He's certainly done it. And so of all the, white coaches that you could pluck out of college football, like, well, maybe the meritocracy worked on this one, which is, I'm obviously joking. But like, I do think
he
that
comes from a coaching tree. His dad won a championship at Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
There you go. Big Red.
It is. Yeah, go big red.
Shout out.
Charlotte, to your original point, too, about Jim in college, like Michigan fans, I think, are numb to it at this point because it's been something that's kind of been like everyone knows Jim Harbaugh wants to go back. The NFL is the ultimate competitive space. It's the Super Bowl that eluded him. Like, he wants all that stuff. And the college system incentivizes you to lie, right? For recruiting, it's the reason we've got bloated 10-year contracts. You've got to go in. Like, he took that interview on signing day last year.
Yes.
The worst opportune time
Yes.
to take that if you're looking to get people to come on over to Michigan and play football. And so, yeah, you've got to come out here and say the opposite thing on the back end of that so people will believe you, even if we all can kind of look around at even the way when he did his new deal, the contract was structured. His buyout's only $3 million this year and decreases each year of his new deal. Once he swung the pendulum back in 2021, Jim got exactly what he wanted contractually out of this, which is where you need to look when you want the truth about how serious a coach is about your school or how good his agent is.
That's so true. I also wonder, this actually sort of segues into what we're going to talk to next. I wonder at a certain, say you're at one of these schools that routinely makes the playoffs or, is routinely ranked week after week after week. Is it harder to win a Super Bowl or a national championship? Because I would argue, I like, numbers wise, you've got a better chance in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So I can see that as if you're a guy who's looking at your life thinking and clearly ambitious and driven, and you're like, well, I want that feather in my cap. Am I more likely to get that as a Super Bowl, or am I going to try to run this back again with the Michigan team where, kids keep leaving? I don't know.
Yeah. It's an interesting because that same sort of value prop question in a different way is what led Brian Kelly in the explanation to leave Notre Dame last year for LSU. It's, I think I've got a better chance to get this one thing that's eluded me over here where the talent's so rich and it's in my backyard. For Jim Harbaugh, who's been shown the door now back-to-back seasons in the CFP, you're right, Charlotte. You're one of 32. There aren't massive talent and resource gaps. And it's not to say Michigan is not talented or not well-resourced, but we know the top end of college football is a bit bloated when you look at the teams that have been the superpowers. So, yes, now the other part of that question that makes it hard is the teams that would be available to him in the NFL. But mathematically, I'm with you on that.
Well, it's how quickly can he do the jackhammer on the Carolina Panthers.
But also, how old is he getting? The grandkids that actually exist that aren't his, surrogates from Michigan, like, are they pining for his time? Because the difference is the NFL gets a break.
Yeah.
While college football coaches have to go to recruiting and scouting and yelling and not to mention the recruiting and scouting of your own staff that probably happens on a yearly basis, especially at big programs like Michigan.
And now with the NIL and portal?
It's just like where's the less of a headache, and the NFL still reigns king in that regard too.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And with him and with a lot of college coaches, the one thing, because of what we talked about, the fact that his track record has been positive at both spots for the most part, he'd have, I'd imagine, a decent shot of walking into any of the situations he's been mentioned with. The Denver Broncos, who fired Nathaniel Hackett, the Colts, who fired their head coach. Why am I blanking on his name right now? Because Jeff said it. Frank Reich. Or the Carolina Panthers after they fired Matt Rule. None of those teams are in a position of power right now. The Colts are going to be a massive overhaul. The Panthers have grossly mismanaged their quarterback position, and the Broncos are tied. You have to have Russell Wilson as your quarterback, which means Jim Harbaugh, if one of those teams was going to coax him over, could probably get a fair amount of control over the roster and be able to pick the ingredients the way he did in college while not having to recruit them the way he did in college.
I just want to say it's really rude of the Denver Broncos to fire Nathaniel Hackett right when I started remembering his name.
That is tough. With first year coaches who are nondescript looking white guys.
Guys, all season I've been like, who the heck is the coach? of the Denver Broncos. I could not. I was like, it's not Vic Fangio. It's not like I'd go through all the names of the people that you like can bear. Like the thing about sports is that there are so many names you have to remember.
So many.
And people. Sometimes it's very difficult, but
Charlotte,
I got Nathaniel Hackett, and then they axed him.
Yeah, the hard part is the what we were talking about earlier, the human part of the fact that there's humans behind these names. Like it just can't. Like I really at a certain time, let me just focus on the name, and Mike cares about getting them right, and therefore I'm trying to care more about getting them right because it's a human on the other end getting their name butchered.
And I finally get Nathaniel Hackett, and I show this human, some respect, and then all of a sudden, I already can't remember who the interim guy is.
Well, and that's, I think, a particularly difficult problem in college football, too. Like, I talk about this with my dad all the time, who called college games last year, calls NFL games for Westwood One this year. NFL roster, at least, you got 53 guys. Most of them don't change. You know the star players that are going to be there, and we've talked about there is the problem with retread coaches, but it does make it easy to remember everybody's name in more than one. In college, you got 100+ people on these rosters, 70+ travel guys, and they cycle out every single year. And now with the portal, it becomes really, really hard to keep track of all these names when you do them for games every week. So it's interesting. That also brings up this whole conversation, a question that Ryan Clark asked on Twitter the other day that I want to ask you guys, because we're coming to the end of bowl season and college football season with the national title. And Ryan Clark asked a very simple question of what's more exciting, college football or the NFL? Charlotte, where do you fall on that coming off of bowl season as we're getting ready for the NFL playoffs, all that good shit?
My knee-jerk reaction, if the question is what's more exciting, college football. I don't think I ever feel more alive when watching like the Tennessee-Bama game this year. Tell me there's been an NFL game that has made you freak out. I mean, I guess the 28-3 Super Bowl because I'm a Patriots fan. Like, but it is because you get the pomp and circumstance in the game environment. I have to tell you guys, last year, after I came off of the college football road trip and jumped back into NFL, I went to the divisional round of playoffs with the Bucks. I forget. See, I can't. I'm getting old, guys.
It was a year ago.
No, it was the game before that. Whatever. I'm at this NFL game. I'm sitting in the press box. I'm walking around the field, and as far as NFL teams go, the Bucks have some pomp and circumstance. They've got a freaking pirate ship at their stadium. Yeah. And I texted a friend and I was like, I cannot get over how sterile and corporate this feels after being at college football games all year. And I think for me, the atmosphere of these wacky things that happen that you would never expect, and the scores run up so high because you either have two teams who are matched in talent and they just make each other better, or they just make each other worse. And the NFL is a different kind of joy. The NFL is watching the highest highs of this profession. These men who can do things that should not be physically possible. Patrick Mahomes, who can bend space and time, going up against Josh Allen, who can, melt space and time. And that is its own sort of exciting, but I think on a sort of raw emotional level, for me, it's very hard to approach that the heart and soul that fuses itself to college football games.
I think you summed it up pretty succinctly there. It is excellence versus chaos in this conversation.
Yes. And it depends what you get off on. I don't think it'll surprise anybody who's followed my career at all that I'm a chaos person.
Charlotte Wilder, big chaos gal.
I will say, though, I find it easier to cover the NFL.
Yes.
I find it much more, the rhythms and the narratives are much easier for me to grasp onto and to make neat in my head and find a way to tell to other people. I think I can take the scene of college football and relay that, but I think that the game itself, I have an easier time with the NFL. So it all sort of, it evens out, but I guess that's my knee-jerk reaction.
The thing about college football, though, is it's regional chaos. Like, very seldomly do you run into someone who cares about the whole as much as they care about the individual parts.
Well, and I think that's part of what college football is trying to change in the playoff era is this entire structure is now trying to make it a more national game because the TV dollars have risen to that level where they want to sell Notre Dame Clemson and Ohio State Notre Dame and these big time matchups that we see during the season that do crazy numbers because the casual viewer can pop into that and feel like they know what's going on because they hear these programs' names all the time because they're the big ones. That's kind of the thing I fall into there with that because, Brandon, in general, you're right. College football was an extremely regional sport like baseball for so much of its existence, and it's now just starting to change. Charlotte, I'm with you. I enjoy the excitement of watching excellence go together, but I think in easy narrative terms, college football does do a very easy job of giving us David versus Goliath because it's a sport with a massive resource gap. Which shout out to Mike Ferguson on Twitter, who authored it, The Chaos Gap, because when you have that sort of gap and it forces people to get creative, you get some wild shit on the other side, like Tulane winning the Cotton Bowl over USC and the Heisman Trophy winner.
I have no words about that. I have no words about that. What the heck? How does that happen? That doesn't happen in professional sports. But also the regional thing is why I think so many people are mad at college football. And I think that the only way to be a sports fan and not drive yourself crazy, things are going to change. You've really just got to, you can be nostalgic and you can complain about it. But like if you can't find the, I don't know, if you need to be able to then find that national excitement. I mean, I'm not making sense anymore, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I think you're right in that you can get excited about the big national things, but I've also encouraged people also take in the finer notes. There's a lot of stuff that exists outside of that, but I think Tulane is really illustrative of this whole point. That's a team that if you zoom in on their story, went 2-12 last season, was displaced by a hurricane for the first month of the year. I had their game against Ole Miss where they were coming off the tail end of that, and that team was exhausted, had been living out of a hotel, away from their school, away from their family and friends, and their season quickly went off the rails after that because who wouldn't in that situation? And for Willie Fritz in that outfit to come back, for Michael Pratt, their quarterback, to be a guy who had offers, I'm sure, in the transfer portal. If he wanted to leap, somebody was going to look and decided to stay past this year, all going into this game where then you get them going in. And at one point in this game, Jeff Schwartz over who covers the Pac-12 tweeted this out. Tulane had 39 points on 40 plays of offense. Like, nothing about the game made sense statistically. They rushed for over 300 yards in that game, and their quarterback was something like 8 for 18 in the entirety of that game.
And didn't Caleb Williams had like over 500 yards of offense or 400?
It was ridiculous. He had an incredible game befitting of a Heisman Trophy winner, but the defense couldn't stop everybody, and so Tulane somehow managed to make that happen and go 12-2 and win the Cotton Bowl a year after going 2-12. You can zoom in and appreciate stories like that exist even as the game becomes increasingly more national. It's harder, it puts a lot more work on the fans, but to Charlotte, to your point, it's about what you want to get out of the process.
Totally. And finding those, I think that's why I so love going to these schools and finding these bizarre traditions, because it feels like the remnants of a time when, even talking to Texas A&M fans about how much they still hate Texas, and their whole fight song is Saw 'em Off, and they haven't been in the same they will be now, but they hadn't been in the same conference in, 20 years, 15, 10, 30, I don't know, whatever. Like, it had been a generation of players, basically. And the fact that still holds true, and you kind of have to search for those things now, because if you're not in the know, you aren't immediately aware of, this traces back to this interstate rivalry. But when you find them, it feels like a little treasure hunt. It's like Easter eggs left over from when the sport was these provincial places playing each other.
Yes, but that's almost like an example of why it's hard to get into it, because it's like if you jump in and on book 7 of Harry Potter, like you're so effing lost, and you don't know the Easter eggs or just like how special this thing is. Where I have to say, I'm a bigger fan of the NFL. That was my first love. And I think I am a little bougie in that way, that like I think I do like the perfection. I do like the class. I almost like that you can fall asleep at a game and then wake up and then be like, oh, this is the best time I've ever had. Like I think there's a little bit of comfort level that comes with watching NFL. It's almost like Airbnb versus like Carnival Cruise Lines.
Which is which in this situation?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, only the best Airbnbs get my feet in them. But yeah, I college football as the Carnival Cruise Line. Airbnb
Oh, yeah.
Where there's a potential for disaster, but you could also have a really good time and there's ice cream on every floor of the ship.
Look, the whole thing could go down in flames and drowning at the same time. However, it would be exciting.
It would be very exciting. There's a chocolate eagle where you go for the buffet at dinner every night, and wow, is that entertaining for a kid. And yes, I'm speaking from experience.
You know a lot about this.
I went on a Norwegian cruise line once as a kid, and the amount of sweets available to me stuck with me forever. Brandon, the idea that it is like jumping, I think where we're at now with college football, walk with me on this for a television comparison. I think we're in the House of the Dragon phase of college football, where you can come in and because it's become such a national game, there is baseline entertainment value available to you. But if you're also someone that likes to dive all the way in, you can go watch the entirety of Game of Thrones and have a little bit more background on everything going on than everybody else here. It's not required viewing at this point in time, but it certainly helps the experience.
God damn, that was a good analogy.
That's amazing.
I watch a lot of football on TV.
Very good. We can tell, and some TV as well, and a lot of Game of Thrones. Yeah, that is actually perfect because there's certain names that are connected to it. Like it was Lindell White's birthday the other day, and I was like, thunder and lightning. Thank God! It was so important to me.
It's like men will do nothing but sit around and name old sports players instead of going to therapy. That is that meme come to life. Celebrating Lendell White's birthday and remembering and wondering why Pete Carroll didn't have him in on that 4th and 1 against Texas in the Rose Bowl.
I have to tell you, whenever that tweet comes up, all I can think is no more Garcia Parra. Immediately. No my Garcia Parra. One right up there with Marcus Smart.
Honestly, for me, I always go to a hockey poster that I had in my room as a kid growing up in Arizona. At that point for the Phoenix Coyotes, the poster featured Keith Tkachuk, Jeremy Roenick, and one of the greatest hockey names of all time, star goaltender Nikolai Khabibulin.
Yes, there it is.
Because they would do the classic sports thing where they ooh it, so you'd go to the games and they would finish it off and Nikolai Khabibulin. It's like those aren't boos, they're boolins.
The first time I heard that it was for Kevin Youkilis, and I'm at a game and everyone's going you, and I'm like, he's our guy. Why are they booing him? It's really confusing for. Anyway.
Oh, that's incredible stuff, gang. Guys. We've solved a lot of the world's problems today on this podcast. We have figured out Jim Harbaugh, destination back to the NFL. We've debated college versus pro sports here. There's only one thing left to do, and it's to ask my friend Brandon if he knows what time it is. As always, we appreciate if you download, subscribe, rate, review Gojo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Tell Brandon what he did and how he did it. I guess it should be ask him what he does and who he does it for and how he comes up with the shit up in the studio. All he wants for his birthday is a 5-star review. Brandon Newman, as always, the author of This, That, and the Third. 3 quick stories on our way out here. Before we head on out, we thank Charlotte Wilder, as always, for giving us so much for time on this podcast here.
Such a pleasure.
Let's start it off with this, guys. Since we talk so much college football, Alabama's prolific trio of star players who stuck around for the bowl game, all declared for the NFL draft. Bryce Young, Alabama's Heisman Trophy winning signal caller at quarterback. Yes. Will Anderson, their all-everything pass rusher, and Jahmyr Gibbs, their transfer running back from Georgia Tech, who start out this year, as well as, I should say, this happened after, Brian Branch, incredible defensive back who had an outstanding game for that team in the Sugar Bowl, all declared for the NFL draft. All could be potential first-round draft picks. Jahmyr Gibbs, that kind of talent, with running backs, it's always a wild card, but wild group of guys, as Will Anderson and Bryce Young will both be talked about for the first overall pick too.
I don't want to sound like Kurt Herbstreit here, but I'm glad they stuck around for the bowl game.
Oh, come on.
What?
You don't have to do that.
Sort of am
I am glad.
I am too. When I saw that they stuck around, I was like, wow, Bryce. I was like, good for you. Also, that might be a really, really stupid decision, but like, thank you.
Right. Like, it's
I couldn't believe it, actually. I thought I heard wrong. I thought I heard and like saw. I thought my eyes deceived me.
That when I got that news, I was like, that is not an advisable business decision.
Yeah, I was like, who's...
I respect everyone's choice, and that's the one thing. As long as it's positioned as, hey, I support your choice. It's cool that we get to watch you guys play one more time. They kind of put Will Anderson on a pitch count, which I thought was responsible, and Bryce Young got his curtain call at the end of that game. But when I saw they announced they were playing in this game, I knew that probably wasn't a good sign for Kansas State, because that meant Alabama was taking this shit very seriously.
Or someone had an NIL deal to play in the bowl game. It's just maybe.
Hey, listen, if that was the case, I hope so too. Pay the kids to play in bowl games if you want them all to stick around. That should be the norm.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's got to be incentive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Make it worth it.
Let the ballers get paid to do it. So yeah, good on you guys. And now they are all healthy and well and get to go make millions of dollars this spring. Look at God, won't he do it?
Mike, before you go to this or that's where we're at. That realistically, is Bryce Young a top 5 quarterback in this next upcoming draft?
Yes, easily. He'll be in. It's going to be the conversation for number 1.
Really?
Okay.
Yes.
No. Sorry, I'm asking Brandon. Really? You're asking that?
Yeah, I'm asking.
I respect that. I respect that question.
I because of the talent on the Alabama teams, I frequently give a lot of disrespect to Alabama quarterbacks. They only recently even had one that was decent in the NFL. It was AJ McCarron, and then they had the slew of the Tuas and the Hurts and the all the things. But it was pretty unanimous that Alabama put trash quarterbacks in the NFL.
Well, yeah, but they don't anymore. And the 3 recent ones you just mentioned are all in the NFL at multiple points in the last 2 years, have performed at a really high level. And this guy was the only one that won the Heisman of the 4 of them that we just mentioned. Now, you can ask questions about the size, but
I don't want to make him the biggest bust that we've seen in years. But I also wouldn't be shocked. Sorry. This is going against what I was saying about treating athletes as humans. Let's see what happens, guys. Let's see what happens.
It is going to be fascinating to watch this, because he is incredibly accomplished as a player, and he is a complete outlier size-wise in a way that we haven't really seen in a while and had to reckon with. So it's going to be tough, but yes, he should be in the conversation for the number 1 overall pick.
Protect Bryce Young. Okay,
I was just let you know that my hate didn't start with him. Like, I was a big Tua's going to be a huge bust guy, and I've tempered that. It didn't come from a good place. So
I'm proud of you for admitting your biases and trying to proceed in God's light in a better way. That's big of you. That's growth.
Thank you.
Speaking of growth, guys, and good news. God, a lot of college news today, but we go with what we got here. The Athletic is reporting, so there's an NCAA transformation committee, which sounds like some incredibly college shit. Like, just on its face value. But Nicole Auerbach over at The Athletic wrote, among a number of things, the NCAA's transformation committee was recommending a few different initiatives, one of which was the idea that D1 sports, sponsored by more than 200 institutions, should consider expanding their postseason fields to include up to 25% of the teams that meet the D1 standard for the sport, which means that in a sport like basketball, you would potentially have an NCAA tournament with like 90 teams in it. Charlotte, Brandon, where are you guys on a 90-team NCAA men's or women's tournament?
I'm here for it, because then we'll get more schools like Gardner Webb where you've never heard of them before, and
oh my God.
And they pop up every or what was the There's one in Nashville that always gets me. Liechtenstein, what is it?
These are like when you get to schools that sound like they could also be Eastern European countries and mascots that are plucked out of medieval times, you have arrived at the right place in college athletics, especially basketball.
Yes, I also think that this sounds extremely... So Charlie Baker just took over as the head of the NCAA. He was the governor of Massachusetts. When I worked at Boston.com, I covered him a lot. This sounds like some extremely... I just came from government. We're going to have a transformation committee. That's like the beautification society of, like that feels very Charlie Baker came from dealing with people in Massachusetts who like want to think they're on the right side of history.
I feel like Leslie Knope is at the head of the transformation committee for the NFL.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
College football.
That's where my head goes.
Tom Haverford is probably actually the real
yes.
head of the transformation committee.
I don't even know if Charlie Baker started in this role, by the way, but that's where my head goes.
Well, listen, I love to see this because as someone who's my sister went to Oral Roberts, so like it was like a big deal for her to like get seen in that way. And also, I'm a big fan of Florida Gulf Coast still, Dunk City. Let's go! Like I like being pushed into fandom for some of these schools. So bring on a bracket. Bring on the brackets for the 96.
Also, by the way, on this front, one of the like true good things, because that would be wild, fun, chaos. One of the true good things they talked about also pushing for a holistic student-athlete benefits model that includes 8 areas schools are urged to commit, including required medical coverage for injuries for a minimum of 2 years following graduations, assistance for out-of-pocket medical expenses, and the ability for athletes on full scholarships to complete their degree within 10 years of leaving school. So, as we talked about, those would be awesome things for young people who often leave college and don't have we hear the thing all the time, go pro in something other than sports. Some of them are dealing with the medical history that comes from their time as college athletes or the complications with their degree, all things that they should and could now get help with, hopefully.
Yeah, talk about won't he do it? Won't they do it?
Man.
Talk to him.
And talk about the super seniors running around there. That's going to be some crazy Van Wilder stuff if that actually comes to fruition.
Yes, Australian.
You just made me flashback to middle school.
Oh, with Van Wilder?
Like, Charlotte Van Wilder. And I'd be like,
oh, wow. I didn't even do that. I apologize.
I always liked it. I was like, sure.
Okay, cool, yeah.
Always, totally liked it. Definitely not triggered right now by Brandon.
No, into it. Thanks, Brandon.
Let's move slowly back away from that.
I believed you.
To the third. Hey, Ohio, welcome to DraftKings Sportsbook and legalized sports betting. We are excited to have you here. We're sorry about what happened with Ohio State, but don't worry. College hoop season's coming up, which we just talked about, is super fun to bet on. You got baseball season coming up. All sorts of good things to look forward to in the not-so-distant future, which leads us to this. In Cincinnati, Ohio this past weekend, as the clock struck midnight and finally people were able to start legally betting on sports, the Hard Rock Casino decided to go all out. As they opened things up, they invited former Reds All-Star Pete Rose to place the first bet at their casino.
That is... Are you kidding me?
I kid you not. Pete Rose, who has a lifetime ban from Major League Baseball due to sports gambling, said, quote, "I don't know a damn thing about odds. Go Reds, go Bengals."
Talking about capping. He's capping.
Talk about trolling.
Like, Pete Rose, who has, seems largely bad in certain ways as of late.
Yeah, Pete Rose as in, the ugly stuff that I don't even feel like getting into.
Yes.
That just happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bad. Actually bad. This, an insane move by here in the name of gambling in Ohio. So, hell of a way to start.
It feels very Ohio to me. Sorry.
Yes, defiant.
Yeah, I'm thinking about all the celebrities that were too busy, like Greg Odom couldn't come out, or what's another big Ohio
Cardell.
Somebody that
oh man, Cardell Jones would have been
Jones.
Cardell
awesome.
Jones would have been an unbelievable.
Great.
I didn't come here to play school, but I did come here to play my odds with X Casino or X Sportsbook.
Ooh.
See?
Ooh.
DraftKings. Maybe we get Cardale on the payroll. I don't know.
Think about it. There's so many ways you can go with this that it's the content marketing virality opportunities are endless.
Yes, exactly.
And they chose a weird one.
They went left on this one very quickly in a way that I would not advise, but definitely makes for the headline that they were looking for.
I'll leave you guys with this. Do you know who they should have had do it? Aisha Curry from her tweet, "The NBA is rigged for money."
Oh my God.
Oh my. Aisha pulling up for the
For Cincinnati's Hard Rock Cafe to place the first bet.
I mean, listen, as LeBron James likes to remind us, him and Steph, just a couple of kids from Northeast Ohio.
Just
so maybe
a couple of kids.
Oh yes, the Steph connection.
Yeah, you have them just walk arm in arm into there and be even though that would probably end up getting them suspended because you probably can't do that in the NBA. We're just going to keep making problems for people wherever we go, which is why we're going to go ahead and just pump the brakes on this and say, hey guys, we appreciate you coming and placing your bet on us in this podcast and hopefully DraftKings Sportsbook. Again, in Ohio, go ahead and do it. It's incredible. A lot of fun, super easy. You hear all the ads we do on this podcast for it. Same game parlays, all the good stuff. Bunch of profit boosts from your boy. You're going to love it and have a good time here. Charlotte, we loved and had a good time with you. Thanks so much, friend.
Michael, Brandon, always a pleasure. Thanks for Wilder Wednesday. Love you guys. Thanks. Mean it. Bye.
Love you, Brandon. Thank you for the sound.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Boom. Money in the bank.